check I'm not on mute. Okay. Hello and welcome to our second in a special Innovation Fund themed webinars that we're doing for the month of February to coincide with the launch of our third innovation funding call. So you're all very, very welcome. We have a fantastic lineup today, but before we get going with that, my name is Breda O'Brien. For those who don't know, I lead the innovation team here in the Department of Public Expenditure and Reform. I'm seconded in from the Department of Enterprise, Trade and Employment. We're a seconded team for those who don't know. So I'm going to introduce my colleagues now, the rest of the team who've been working away on this funding call. So Anne Broders, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Anne Broders. I'm currently the Innovation Fund Manager with the team, and I'm on secondment from Enterprise Ireland. So I'll be looking forward to receiving and reviewing all the projects that come in with the fund this year. Thanks.
Thanks, Anne. Anne is our accountant who you'll be dealing with primarily around your memorandum of agreement and all the funding stages. And Anne will be the one at the end of the year looking for all your paperwork. Great. Okay, thanks, Anne.
Thanks.
Dean, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Hi everybody, I'm Dean Reid. I currently work in the innovation team in Deeper. I'm seconded from the Department of Justice and Equality. So I work on the Innovation Fund, so I'm looking forward to get all the applications in and reading through them, seeing how they get on. I also manage the Innovation and Collaboration Forum, so if anyone wants to join up, please feel free. It's a nice kind of space where people can share ideas and collaborate with each other. So if anyone's interested in joining up, just email in or email in the chat box here, we'll get back to you. That's me.
Thanks, Dean. Catherine?
Hello, everyone. Catherine Matters here. I'm on secondment from Wexford County Council. I work on the Innovation Fund, and I also work on communications and the Innovation Scorecard, collaboration with EI and IDA that we'll be hearing about today. Thank you.
And last but not least, Vinny.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Vinny Lanigan, and I am seconded in from the Defence Forces, and I'm managing the Public Service Innovation Network. Just in relation today, if anyone does have any questions or comments for our panelists or speakers, if you look on the right-hand side of your screen, you should see a chat function or a Q&A function. If you put your question in either place, both are being monitored today, and we'll certainly do our very best to pose those questions to our panelists. So sit back and enjoy.
Thanks so much, Vinny. So before we get started with our fantastic range of speakers today, I'm just going to give a very quick overview of the funding call for this year. There's a few changes from the previous years, and just for those who might be new to the fund and haven't heard about the fund, I'll just outline a few of the kind of main features. So if you just bear with me while I share my presentation. I'll make this presentation available afterwards. It'll be on the website. And also, I should say this session is being recorded, and the recording will also be available on our website and social media. Okay, here we go. Vinny, can I get a thumbs up? Is that, you see that? Great, okay. So the funding call is now open. It opened last week. We've unlike other years, we've actually started getting quite a number of projects in already. So there's huge interest. The important thing to note now straight away in your diaries is that the deadline. So you have until 12 noon on the 24th of February to submit your projects and submit them online. So Catherine has set up an online application facility. All applications must be submitted online. If you are having technical problems, please consult your IT sections first in case there's any problems with access. And in the second instance, then you can contact us at innovation@per.gov.ie. So that's innovation@per.gov.ie, and we'll see if we can help facilitate your application form. So a lot of people sort of wonder, and I'm just moving back to this because we still get asked, but what is innovation? And a lot of people think particularly innovation is specifically to do with, you know, new technologies. And while that can be true, it's not just what innovation is. And also a lot of people tend to conflate innovation with invention, and which obviously is something brand new to the world, which obviously we would welcome, but again, we wouldn't see innovation in that way. So recently, back in November, our colleague Vera Mcgrath launched the new innovation strategy for the public service, and it's called Making Innovation Real. Excuse me. So what is innovation? So the definition we use is innovation is a new and viable offering that adds value. So it can be something new, but if it's not viable in terms of how much it costs, or if it doesn't create that value piece at the end, then it isn't innovation. And similarly, lots of people might have an idea, which is a very good idea, but an idea in itself is not innovation. So if you want to find out a bit more about what is and isn't innovation, and that Making Innovation Real strategy is a good place to start, and that's on our website, ops2020.gov.ie/innovation, and you'll find our innovation hub there. So what is the Public Service Innovation Fund? Excuse me. We were brought together in 2019 to, as a team, a seconded team, to work on a number of initiatives to deepen an innovation culture in the public service. So whilst there's pockets of innovation, or there were pockets of innovation across the public service, our innovation maturity wasn't great. And so myself and the team were brought together to sort of come up with, develop and devise various different initiatives to gather, I guess, motivation and momentum around the agenda. And one of the things being the fund. Another, the network, as Vinny mentioned, and we now have over 150 members of our innovation network from all sectors of the public service. Another initiative we work on is Innovation Week, which you might recall we moved online last year, and there was great interest. We'd nearly 5,000 people tune into our events. So the fund is an important one. That cash injection at the start of a project can make or break, a pilot or a proof of concept. It kind of gives that backing to get the thing off the ground. Sometimes in the public service, it can be difficult to successfully secure funding for projects that haven't been tried and tested before. You haven't got that evidence base to prove how valuable the innovation might be. And so what we aim to do is to support those projects that wouldn't normally get funding in organizations. So it's a key initiative to promote an innovation culture, as I said. And a big thing for us would be that this is not normal business as usual type projects. We're not looking to fund something that's happening already. If you've initiated something and you need some funding to get started, that can be considered, but we're not looking to displace already existing funding streams, or, as I said, business as usual. So it has to be something that's new to your organization. It doesn't have to be new to the sector, for example, or new to the public service. It can be happening in another part of the public service, or in another jurisdiction, in another country, for example, and you've looked, and we call this stealing with pride, you've looked at other jurisdictions, a different country, for example, a different health service, and they might be using a specific technology, or they might be using a particular innovation, and so that we would consider that innovation. So to date, we funded just over 52 projects with funding of about $1.5 million. And in the combined 2 years, and I should say we did join mid-year in 2019, so a year and a half effectively, we've received over 500 applications. There are ideas out there, and I think what we've seen as well is that there's maybe not as much confidence as there should be about the super ideas that are out there. So if you're in doubt, please do send your application in. Many projects have been funded and they've been surprised. The project leaders have been surprised that they were funded. They're kind of questioning themselves about how good their project was. So, let us decide that. You could be very pleasantly surprised about how your project is received. So just going over the stats in terms of what projects we funded in 2019 and 2020. So 18 projects in 2019, we just over $500,000 in terms of the budget that year, 140 applications. That was, we launched the fund a week after I joined and the team joined. So we really hadn't done a huge amount of communications at that point, and there was still quite an interest from the public service. And then obviously we'd done quite a bit, and Catherine would lead in our communications in terms of that, and we saw the numbers jump. So an increase of 168% in applications in 2020, 34 projects with just under €1 million in support, 364 applications. So you'll see, and this is you know, it shows the popularity of the fund. It also shows how competitive the fund is, unfortunately. We just had the ability to fund 9% of projects received in 2020, but I really don't get disheartened about that. What we found, and we've heard on the grapevine, is that what people are doing is they're using applications that maybe didn't get support through our fund, because we just have obviously a limited amount of budget, and they've used the application in terms of a business case to secure funding in their own organisations, or they've developed the project further and worked with other organisations. So all is not lost if you're not successful. It doesn't mean your project isn't good. It just probably means we just don't have enough money to support your great ideas. But we do send feedback letters, and hopefully they're helpful. And also there's, you know, maybe if there's some constructive feedback, you can work on them and maybe supply the project for the next year's call. So for those who haven't applied before and are really interested to know, well, where do I start? How do I find out more about this? We have prepared a very detailed guide, information guide for those, and that outlines the criteria, the process, breaks down that criteria into areas looking at specifically, well, what do we mean and what are we looking for in the types of projects. So that's a really good place to start, and please do that. That's on ops2020.gov.ie/funding. That you'll find details about this year's call. You'll also find details about projects we've supported last year, and summaries, and also in the 2019 call. So that's a great place to start. But if you do have any questions, you can contact us, myself or the team, at innovation@per.gov.ie. So important features for this year's call. For those who have applied before will know that we started funding at €10,000. We've actually shifted that slightly up to 25,000 is our minimum funding for this year's call, up to a maximum ceiling of 60. So what we're seeing on the ground is that many organisations are introducing innovation funds or innovation budgets in their organisation, and are maybe supporting some of that smaller very small pilot to maybe develop a bit, and we see ourselves as shifting towards long-term funding that larger scale project. But if your organisation has got some sort of small budget and you've been able to sort of test your idea, it might be in a position now to scale it across the organisation with funding from this call. But that's the rationale why we've moved up. And also we always had an option of 100,000 before, but we never actually funded to that value for one singular project. And we kind of feel that, you know, between the procurement processes and all of that, it can be quite challenging on top of the day job to spend such a large award. So we're moving towards 25 to 60. And it's important to mention at this point that, you know, you don't have to apply for funding for your entire project. You can break the project up into pieces, into stages. So that early pilot or that early proof of concept stage, then it might be implementation stage, and then it can be scaling the pilot or transferring the innovation or so on. So, you know, you can come back, and one would assume we're going to have this fund around for quite a while. So maybe this year you can apply for part of that. What's really important is that the money is spent within the year. And what we mean by that is that the funding needs to be drawn down, the invoices need to be paid, and Anne at the end of the year will want to see a transaction report from your finance unit, your financial system, to show that the payment has gone through. So that's the level of being paid it needs to be before the vouched expenditure can be approved. And that's another important feature for those who had applied before. There will be no pre-funding of grants this year, and so instead of us offering a portion of the grant up front, organisations who are successful will fund that the commencement of their project, and there'll be 2 opportunities to claim that funding. The first one on the 14th of July, and that's the first reporting deadline. And you can claim the portion of expenses that you've accumulated to that point. So that's the first deadline. The second then and final is the 15th of November, and that's when the project needs to be finished in its entirety as described in the Memorandum of Agreement. So when you're successful, we agree a Memorandum of Agreement with between DEEPR and your organisation, and signed off by both at a very senior level, the head of your organisation, and at Assistant Secretary level, the head of reform in DEEPR. And that outlines specifically what's expected in terms of the milestones and the deliverables and the time frame. So say, for example, you get funding to fund stage 1 of your project, which is proof of concept. So that, and perhaps you got a contractor to help you with that. All of those, the deliverable needs to happen, and the contractors must be paid in accordance with public procurement rules and so on by the 15th of November. And that allows us then to check your claim, check your report and all of that, and have it all done by sort of early December, which is our last date internally in DEEPR to process payments, because we want to ensure obviously you get the money in time before the end of the year. We run an annual budgetary cycle, of course, so you know, the money that's not spent in our budget, so our €1 million, whatever it might be, we lose. So it's really important that we are picking projects that we're, you know, confident can be finished before the end of the year, or parts of projects. Okay, so the criteria are really important. It's the same as last year for those who are returning applicants. The largest marks are awarded to the first 2 areas you'll see there on the screen. Novelty, which is innovation. Is it new to your organisation? That's 30 marks. And value, outcomes and user impact. So the impact of the innovation is 30. The next 4 are 10 marks each, and I'll go to them in turn now over the next few slides. But generally what we're looking for is innovations that help your organisation do what you do better, you know, for your user, whether that's the public or whether that's a business that you provide grants to, whether that's the patient, whether that's the child in school, whatever it is. Maybe it's the person, the staff member themselves processing. Maybe we're creating a nicer environment for the organisation. Maybe you're going to create efficiencies and cost savings for the organisation. So that's just a slide that outlines some of the things that we think are important to consider when you're putting your application together. So the first area I'll focus on is the value. That's so important. The innovation can be striking and interesting and so on, but if it doesn't create that value piece at the end, it's not going to be successful in our fund, and we wouldn't consider it good innovation if it doesn't have that impact at the end of the day on the user. So are you proposing to create a better user experience for the public? Will the public be able to have access to public services and not spend as much time or money accessing those services, for example? Will the organisation save huge amounts of money by bringing on and using a new technology, for example, to do a process, allowing then more value add work for their staff so they can focus on that as opposed to that repetitive type of maybe data entry? Is there an idea around using available data and reusing it in a smart way to the benefit of the organisation or to the public, for example? And ultimately, will there be a better experience for staff providing the service? Novelty then, as I said, it's not necessarily invention. We welcome invention, but most cases it's an application that's been used somewhere else in another organization. So as I said, it doesn't have to be new to the world, but it has to be new to your organization, a new way of doing things. So these slides, they're all screenshots from our guidelines. So they're all in the guidelines that you can download on ops2020.gov.ie/funding. So we've some suggestions there about what maybe new would look like. So is it that it involves better employee engagement? Are you engaging with your stakeholders in a different way? Are you adopting new technologies? And we have some really nice projects that talk about this. And I'm looking at Alex, for example. His project really is interesting in terms of sensor technology. So they're the two main areas that garner the most points. So the next four then are 10 points each. So the transferability, scalability, and learning. Does your project have the ability to scale across organizations? You know, if something is incredibly niche, it can still get funding, right? But it's unlikely. We want to fund ideally projects that have that chance of being scaled. So I see, and I'm mentioning Alex again because I'm thinking his project is looking at one local authority sector, but it can be absolutely scaled across the public service. So they're the type of projects we really want to see. Can learning be, you know, gained from your project and spread elsewhere? So if it's happening in one school, can it then be transferred, the idea, to other schools? We absolutely would love to see some innovations coming in from schools this year. So I really would like to see an increase in that. We haven't had huge numbers to date, so I'd love to see some innovations coming in there. Does your project look at new ways of developing processes? Are you thinking about user-centric design, design thinking, and co-creation? So that's that part. The next two then are 10 points again as well, and collaboration with others. We're really encouraged that, so that collaboration can be within your organization, but ideally with other organizations, say in your sector or even outside of your sector or beyond. So do think about that when you're thinking about, is there any natural partners that I can work with here that it makes sense that if we work together, the project will be better and it can be more scalable? Ourselves, and Catherine alluded to it, myself and Catherine have worked, and Anne, with David and colleagues in Enterprise Ireland on a project that he'll be presenting about today. And hopefully David will talk about how that brought value to the project, and it wasn't painful working with us and others. So the evidence base is interesting because I think a lot of people think, oh, you need to have evidence. How can we have evidence of a project we haven't done before? This evidence base can be about, well, prove to us about the problem. Can you tell us about the evidence base of the challenge or the opportunity you see where the evaluation can add, or the valuation or the innovation even can add value? So have a look and see, well, does the process take X amount of time with X amount of staff? And if we brought in a new technology, we anticipate efficiencies. So it's a different kind of way of looking at the evidence base. It's not necessarily about the innovation that we haven't yet adopted, but it could be about the anticipation of what the evidence could be, but also about the problem that exists in the first place. So the procurement plan and contribution of the recipient is really important. We've evolved this over the years. We need to see the commitment from your organisation at the senior level. So from a government department point of view, it needs to be signed off by a principal officer and its equivalent. It's all outlined in the guidelines. You can see what the equivalent senior leader in your organisation would be. We need to see the commitment in terms of the plan. So have you, if your project, if you're seeking, say, more than 25,000 and for any one contract, we need to see that you've thought about the fact that that's, over threshold and require a particular procurement approach. And have you addressed that in your timeline for funding in a realistic way? So we need to be convinced that you can do the project within the time. Similarly, the contribution of the recipient organisation, it doesn't have to be match funding. It can be, and we welcome that absolutely, but some organisations mightn't have that match funding to give. But what is really important is that we can see the contribution in terms of maybe it's 2 staff members for a quarter of their time will work on this project for the year. So that's really important to see that commitment. I think I've covered most of everything else that's on that slide. Yeah, I've mentioned here as well about co-funding. So it's really important if there's co-funding, and this is beyond, say, match funding from your organisation, but if there's other partners outside of that, it's incredibly important that we see a clear line about, well, what would the innovation funding support be used for, as opposed to maybe, say, European funding that you've secured. So it needs to be clear delineation between the types of funding that you get. So that's me. Good luck to those applying. Again, as a first point, go to this webpage, ops2020.gov.ie/funding. Do send in your questions if you have any. Put your comments or questions. We have the chat function, as Vinny outlined, and the Q&A function. You mightn't be able to see them, we can, and we'll address them at the end of all of the presentations. So I'll just stop sharing. 2 minutes. Stop. There we go. So as I said, today and last week's webinar could actually be, you know, Public Appointment Service could use this as a way to attract talent and see into schools and stuff to see the diversity of the types of public service jobs. And we're delighted that to have fantastic projects to showcase today. And thanks again to all of our guests. First up, I'm absolutely delighted, one of my favourite projects, to introduce Vera Mcgrath. Vera is an occupational therapy graduate of NUIG in 2012. She's over 7 years clinical experience working in care with the elderly and neuro rehabilitation. She is currently working in St Finbarr's Hospital in Cork and is completing a postgraduate in older person rehabilitation in UCC. You're very welcome, Vera. Over to you. Thanks.
Thanks a million, Breda. I'm just going to share my screen. Bear with me. I think the same thing has happened as yesterday, Vinny.
Perfect. Do you want me to click through them for you?
Yeah, please.
No problem.
So my project was called Evidence-Based Upper Limb Rehabilitation using Novel Virtual Technology and Patient-Led Toolkit. Yeah. Go to the next slide. So a bit about us in St Finbarr's. So St Finbarr's is a large campus in Cork City and we have lots of different resources on site. We are a centre for primary care, OTs and physios for South Lee. We have a day hospital, we have long-term care units, we have a rehab unit, we have a memory cafe, we have different clinics that happen here. We host the Cork Stroke Support Group. Our early supported stroke discharge team comes on site with us as well. So we are really a large campus, and for me, I work in the occupational therapy department of the rehabilitation unit. There's 4 of us full time. We cover 71 beds, and included in that is our 12-bed stroke rehab unit. So the ratio of OT to patient is 1:18, and if you're an OT probably in Dublin looking at that right now, you will probably be quite shocked by that number. I used to work in a rehab unit in Dublin. My ratio of patient was probably maximum 10 at a time, anything between 6 and 10. And when I moved back to Cork, my caseload inflated by 8 people. We don't get cover for annual leave, and we're a weekday only service, and we have no dedicated OT stroke staffing, so all 4 of us cover the whole unit. There's not one person dedicated to the 12 beds. So yeah, so if you work in stroke is really excellent because it gives really good clear guidelines about best practice, and it's an area that's continuously being researched and into. And of all stroke survivors, 85% of them will have an upper limb deficit. So that's huge. And what the best practice guidelines tells us is that I should be doing 45 minutes of OT intervention with them daily. So 5 days a week, I should be giving them 45 minutes. But when the Irish Heart Foundation did an audit, they found only 23% of stroke units in Ireland are doing this. And I can tell you, I can make a pretty big guess that those units are in the east of the country. we're the second biggest city in the Republic, and we're not achieving this. And we're told in practice when we're learning, you've got to get things moving early, you build neural pathways, neuroplasticity is what it's called, repetition, 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 you get functional return, and that improves someone's quality of life. But when Serata conducted a study, they found that of the total OT intervention time that's being provided, only 24% of that is upper limb focus. So 8 minutes per session is only on upper limb, and you're thinking 85% of people have an upper limb deficit. So for me, and my reflection of entering this project, what was my key issues that I wanted to address? Well, we have an understaffed service. I can't do anything about that. I can't grow new OTs out of the trees and put them on the ground. Because of our input on upper limb rehab was being deprioritized in our practice because we had to do everything else. We had to cover cognition, we had to cover equipment, we had to cover and support people with, grant applications and discharge planning. And upper limb rehab was occurring in context rather than the focus of our sessions. We sat down, we talked about our practice, and we all were doing different things. We came from different areas and different backgrounds. And one thing that we find a challenge is you talk to patients and after a stroke and they want to walk, I want to walk. Mobility is their number one thing that they want to get back doing. But on the flip side, patients want to do more and families want to do more. And we kind of ran with that idea. So for the project goals for entering innovation funding, I looked at how could I optimize mine and my colleagues' OT treatment time to create a better experience for my patients, to give them individual therapy programs, and that not just, give them a prescriptive thing to do, and as well look at can we give more therapy intervention to patients outside of just the 5 days? Can we do a 7-day service as well? So the first thing I looked at was virtual technology. I did a literature review of what's happening in upper limb rehab now, and virtual technology is very new. It's been happening mainly more in the last 5-6 years, and it has big claims. We've seen it, most rehab units in the country will have a Wii. And that's kind of how it's been introduced in a low level. But now we're seeing bigger systems come on board, and there's big claims with them. They said you can provide feedback, increase patient engagement, enhance therapy, but they cost a lot of money, a lot of money. And the issue with them is that there's not a load of high quality evidence because of that they're just so new. So what I did was I just got equipment on trial. So I tried a few different equipment from medical companies, and one of the things I trialed was the Kinestica by Mio, and I just got it out and I tried it and my patients tried it, and we liked it and patients liked it. And the bonus of, other than looking at cognitive or upper limb rehab, there was cognitive retraining functions on it as well. And it had built-in biometrics. You can track activity, you can create, I'm reading off like their claims here. You can track progress through each game, provides a score at the end of the task, activity can be graded. You can track progress through built-in biometrics and graphs. So I could print out the outcome measures at the end to give that numbers value to whether things were improving or not. And for the Bimeo itself, it was one of the lower priced virtual technology systems that were out there. Some of the competitors we looked at were €10,000 more. So I'm just going to play a quick video if you want to play, Finny, just to give you an idea of how the virtual technology system works, how the Bimeo works.
Vera, you might try playing that video.
Yeah.
We do assure everyone we did practice all this before and everything did work. certainly great sound effects on the videos, Vera.
Okay. Yeah, but one thing we found with the virtual technology, it wasn't a foolproof system. So, you know, there was infection control issues with it. You know, it had to be kept under lock and key. So it was an excellent system to use Monday to Friday with therapists or with the rehab assistant, but we couldn't be letting families, you know, have access to this at the weekend to like a €13,000 piece of equipment. So it definitely solved the problem for the better patient experience Monday to Friday. But then to come back to the 7-day service, I needed to look at an alternative that I could to use with patients as well. And one of the things I looked at was the GRASS program. It's a bit old school. It's been around for a while, but it's hugely well researched. And there's a lot of really nice evidence behind it. And what it is patient toolkit. And inside the box, you have all these everyday items. So you can see there's a button shirt, you have lollipop sticks, you've got clothes pegs, you've a tennis ball. And what I did was I got these toolkits made up following the instructions, and we can access the instruction manuals for free. So you can print off the instructional manuals for free. There's 3 different graded levels. And these toolkits can be given to patients to keep at the bedside for their use. They can be set up with the box by a carer or HCA, or by family, or by the patient themselves, depending on their ability. And they can work on these on the evenings and the weekends. So it lets the patient give themselves upper limb treatment when they want to, because when I did an audit, a lot of patients in the evening, they're watching TV, there's a lot of sitting around, and at the moment with no visitors, they don't have that interaction in the evening time. So if you just go to the next slide, so this is an example of some of the activities, and they're focused primarily very upper limb. So it's looking individually at the shoulder, the elbow, the wrist, and the hand itself. So you can see that some of them are just movements, and then some of them involve the equipment themselves. So the lady on the bottom right hand corner, that's Theraputty. It's like a type of mala, and it has a resistance, and she's using them to cut like a knife and fork, like as if she was cutting her dinner up, to practice that. And this lady, so she's working in fine motor. So what she has is she has clothes pegs, and she's working on pinch, and she's lining the clothes pegs all around the edge. And you might think this is really basic, but this is something people just can't do after a stroke. They can't pinch and coordinate themselves to do such a basic activity. And the reason why the GRASS program is so nice is you're just using everyday things. These are everyday things that you would do normally to practice getting back to using your hand functionally. So just the project costing. So the Bimeo was 11,000. The height adjustable table was nearly 2,000. And then the GRASS boxes, we initially had hoped to buy them all in from America, but welcome to COVID and a pandemic. And Plan B meant that we made the boxes up ourselves with a company. We supplemented some of the more expensive bits through HSE procurement, so like weights and Theraputty, which we can access anyway as a department. And then printing for color printing for the instruction books, and took for the rest. So we were awarded 15,000, and that's how it was broken down. So just the last thing I just want to comment on is just for advice for applicants 2021. For me, I'm in healthcare, so all our work needs to have some type of evidence base to it. So make sure that you do a literature review, look up what's there. It might not even be high level evidence, but look and see, demonstrate that you've researched into it, and that if there is, you know, it's been used elsewhere, and what it is used for and who it is used by. Trial it, so get it on trial, get it out, get your reps out, give it a go. I videoed myself trialing it, and I put it on YouTube, and I put a link into my application to demonstrate that I had actually used it and liked it. Team, I have this in capital letters. So it was initially my project, and it very quickly became a team project, because I couldn't have done this by myself. It's too much to just, unless this is your work for the year, for me working full-time and trying to get the project implemented, I couldn't have done this all myself. So with thanks to my manager, Megan, and to Maureen as well, it took the three of us to just get it implemented right to the end. Transferability. So the reason why I put the slide in about Finbars as a campus is when I was justifying my application, you know, we have the Cork Stroke Support Group here, we have early support discharge. So I'm happy for the early support discharge OT or physio to come in and borrow the equipment or use the equipment. Maybe not in the current climate, but going forward when things go back to normal, most definitely we have a fantastic relation with them. They can come in and use our equipment. And like that, if I'm sending a patient for rehab at home to the ESD team, they can take the toolkit with them, and they can, there's a continuity of therapy happening once they leave us as well. And the last thing is outcome measurability. So like having good evidence of how the project will work, how the project will affect people. Voting might be just a verbal feedback qualitative way, or if you can demonstrate from an outcome measure point of view. So we can, with therapy, I use outcome measure tools to show before and after of my work as well. So I included that in my application too. And that's me.
Thanks so much, Vera. What an excellent presentation. And again, I just want to thank you on behalf of our team for being with us here today. Yesterday when we were doing the practice, Vera was in a COVID ward all scrubbed up, and I think sometimes we forget the harshest thing that we have to do is just sit at home and watch Netflix, you know, and then we have our colleagues on the front line every day putting their lives at risk and their families' lives. So just a big thank you from our team anyway, Vera, and to your team.
Thank you.
Because not only then on top of everything here, you know, our colleagues here and the other colleagues of the 34 projects, you know, they all applied before this pandemic happened and still managed to navigate the pandemic and do their projects. I'm probably cursing us, I'd say, in the background near the end of the year. I don't blame you. But, you know, it also shows the commitment, Vera, and you can see there that strong commitment coming through in Vera's presentation to her patients to try and help them and help their families get their families better after such a horrific kind of health event in their lives. So just to say as well, I really love the fact that it's not just the tech, you had the mixture of that, and really importantly, and it doesn't have to be health service, of course, but you know, how you involve the user, obviously when that's possible, in seeing how the tech worked. You trial the tech and got patients to trial that, and where that's possible to involve the users of the service or develop the policy or whatever, we definitely advocate for that when you can, of course. So, you know, and then the gamification piece I loved as well, because you're making rehab fun, which I'm sure is not fun, particularly after such a health event. So well done. What a fantastic project. And thanks again for joining us, Vera. So if anyone has any questions for Vera, you can pop them in the Q&A function or the chat function, and Vinny and the rest of the team will get to those later. But thanks again, Vera. So next up, another one of my favorites, Claire Kelleher has worked with Citizens Information Board since 2015 and moved to the advocacy team in 2018 to work primarily in service delivery for the sign language interpreting service, to develop and promote services for the deaf community, to include remote interpreting services through Irish Remote Interpreting Services. And this one really has struck a chord, and you know, unless you're in that situation, it's just really heartbreaking to think of, you know, involving so many people just to carry out some daily chores and tasks. And so this is a really important project, and I'm delighted Claire can be with us here today to outline what she's come up with. So thanks a million, Claire. Over to you.
Hi, and thank you. I've got a presentation to share, so I'll pull my screen up and share my presentation. It's a great opportunity to share the project that we're working on, and for people to understand what the needs are. So as I said, I work with the Citizens Information Board, and Citizens Information Board is about providing information, advice and advocacy to a range of public services and social services. On the team working on the project is Lucia Venturi and myself, and we were mainly focused on getting this project through and getting it out there. And what we set out to achieve when we were looking for funding is to pilot an application where a deaf person could get on-demand or an appointment-based interpreting services, and to have all of that through the interpreters who are already working with SLIS, and to have it on one platform. The other part of the project and what we wanted to achieve was that the public services could provide their services and make their services accessible to the deaf community. So the need arose. So if we consider that if we have an issue, if we need to call our bank, call our doctor, or if we break down at the side of the road, we can take our phone out and we make a phone call, and we never give it a second thought. For a deaf person, that opportunity isn't there. So they will have to get somebody else to make that call for them, which is not always appropriate to have somebody else call for you or take your information or have your private information. If you break down at the side of the road and get rescue services, then you take that call. And even if you use the app that they have available for most of the services, there is always a backup call that you'll get. So you always have to have somebody with you as a deaf person to make a call, or you need somebody to take the call on your behalf, which takes away independence, people's independence. Then there's been a number of reports over the past couple of years, and CIB included a report as well on accessibility. And all of them look at technology and the need for better technology. And the ISL Act, which is the Sign Language Interpreting Act, that came into law on the 23rd of December. And again, that also highlighted the need for better technology to service the deaf community in Ireland. So what's available now is that if a deaf person wants to make a normal phone call, they have to, in advance, they have to book an appointment on one system. Then they use Skype for Business to engage with an interpreter who will make the call to the end person. It's a clunky process, and while it is working well and people are still getting services and the interpreters are doing an amazing job, it's not on one platform and it's not an easy solution, and it's a time issue. So you have to think in advance what calls you want to make. And what we wanted to achieve and what we are achieving with the app is that we have a phone-based app where somebody can either book an appointment or they can make an on-demand call, and they go straight to the interpreter who will relay their call to the end service. And then that service will also be able to return the call. So it's a two-way process, which hasn't been able to happen. We haven't had access to before. The deaf community have not had access to before. And so this is what we used our funding for, is to put that process in place. And we're still working at and making, kind of finite, we're improving it all the time, basically. So I suppose what we needed to do was we carried out extensive research. We wanted to have all the information. We wanted to understand the needs of the deaf community, the needs of service providers. We wanted to know the technology that was available. There are international companies who provide the service in other countries. We just didn't have it here in Ireland. So we had to go and talk to other services to see how they deliver the service and what's available. Then I suppose engagement with stakeholders is hugely important, working with the sign language interpreting service because they're currently delivering remote interpreting, working with the deaf community, interpreters, service providers, and the deaf organizations around the country who understand the need and who are able to help us to access the best service to pilot. Of course, building a business plan was really important. The risks involved, and then a whole lot of opportunities presented themselves along the way that we were able to kind of change direction and take on board, and that's been really important. So what we've achieved to date with the funding that we received, and we received 50,000 euros from the Innovation Fund, and what that allowed us to do was we procured an app that we can pilot for 6 months. So a deaf person can download the app with iOS, Android, or on their PC. And gives them access to on-demand interpreting. We have been able to gather really high quality data, which we haven't had access to before. So we understand the demographic, we understand what people's needs are. even and how the service will need to be resourced going forward, you know, to, what the time frame is where the demand lies for people. Part of the funding was used for social media campaign to help us to promote within the deaf community, and also with service providers so that they understand that there's an access avenue for them to use to deliver services. One of the things we're very excited about is that we have procured and we're working with the Irish Deaf Society to develop and design a whole series of educational videos. So we had thought about an e-learning kind of module, but then we looked at what would make it easy. So we have a series of 5 videos that will look at everything from what deafness is, people's entitlements, what it means for the Irish Sign Language to now be a recognised language, and people's people, you know, are entitled to use their first language of choice, how to work with an interpreter, what people's requirements are under the new legislation, and you know, the do's and don'ts of working with an interpreter and making the experience as good as, you know, the best experience possible for the deaf client. And of course, the evaluation piece is really important because it's looking at the technology that we're using. It's looking at the experience for the interpreter, because up to now they've had the, you know, they will have had an appointment-based service that they're delivering, and now it's on demand. So it changes how they work every day, and then how to manage that whole piece of work, and to look at the different technologies out there so that when we do go to procure something for a permanent solution, that we'll have all of the information that we need. And the feedback from the deaf community to date has been astounding. It has offered people independence. People are saying that it gives them their dignity back, and that this is what social inclusion actually means, that you can pick the phone up and make a call like you would, like any other person can do, and that you don't need to be relying on somebody else, or you don't need to be waiting 2 days, you know, to be able to make that call, which is really important. So what it looks like. So the app, it's easy to download, it's very user-friendly. And again, like I said before, you can bring it onto your Android or Apple phone, iPad or laptop. What's been a whole new experience for people is that then they have a dial pad, so they can just dial whatever number they want to dial. They don't have to kind of put that in advance. They can just dial a number as we do when we pick our phones up. And then the picture here this is Lucia in the main picture. We did a mock-up. So when the deaf person gets through to the interpreter, the interpreter's on the big screen and they're up in the top right-hand corner. And so they can have their conversation. The deaf person will say, I want to make my call, and then the interpreter will relay the call and put the call through. So we started the project on the 16th of November, once we had the software in place and we had the platform there. And we have, so we ran a test from the 16th of November up to Christmas time to make sure that we got all the technical problems out of the way. And there was a few issues, and just the setting up issues and helping people to get used to the new technology and transferring across from what they were used to. There we have 200, well, as of yesterday, we have 201 people registered to use the app. We have capacity for 300 for the duration of the pilot. So it's quite a good number of people. Then in January, we kicked off live, and there was 210 calls made and through the service in January. Excuse me. And that service is open from 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, which is limited, but I think for the duration of the pilot, it will give us a really good understanding of what the needs are. And already yesterday, we had 200 calls for February, and we're only halfway through the month. So we're definitely going to double our numbers for this month. And then, of course, it's all about team effort. I mean, without the team and putting everything together, and all the pieces, of course, need to come together. And there have been so many people. And like I said at the beginning, it was Lucia and I who started working on the project. But of course, IT have become really important, and our procurement officer has become our best friend. All of the people working through the team, the senior management, our finance officers, and everybody has really come on board to help us make this kind of a reality, which is really great. And of course, the sign language interpreting service who are hosting the platform for us has been hugely cooperative, and we're working really well together, and we can't now envisage a time when this service won't be there for people. And the interpreters, of course, have been, the leading stars, because they've changed the way they've worked. They've been open to taking calls and testing out the technology and working with us on every step of the way. And for interpreters, actually, it's been a really, that was one of the big opportunities that came out of this project, is that before the service was delivered in the Deaf Village in Dublin, it was a desk-based call centre sort of setup. And now, because of the platform and because of the security that offers, interpreters can work on that platform regardless of where they're based in the country. So we have been able to bring people on board from all over the country to work on, to deliver the service. So we're hoping that we'll be able to extend that and grow that service, because in Ireland at the moment we have developed a new register for a professional register for interpreters, and there are 86 interpreters registered, and which seems like a good number of interpreters, but if you consider there are approximately 5,000 people in Ireland who use ISL as their first language. So it's a very small number of people. So we're hoping that if there's more opportunity, that more people will choose to go down that line and get involved with or become interpreters. Next steps for us is that we can take all of this learning and we can scope out a permanent solution. We want to be sure that we get the right application in place, and we want to ensure that we're meeting all of the needs. The funding has allowed us, and it's really given us an opportunity to delve in and understand what's there, to understand what the needs are. And we can see now very clearly, some of the things that we haven't gotten right along the way, that we now know how important they are or what they mean. And hopefully, going forward, we'll have less restrictions, so we can go out and we can meet the deaf community and understand and hold proper stakeholder engagements with people, so that we can really kind of get a better feel. But we're very confident that this has been really worthwhile, and we're really thankful to have had the opportunity and had the funding given to us so that we could get this project up and running. So that's me. Thank you.
Thanks a million, Claire. What a wonderful project. I think both your project, Claire, and Vera's project have in common that strong empathy piece and real understanding of your users. And I think for any of those in the public service that are looking in thinking, oh gosh, where do I start? Or think about who are your clients, who are your users, who are your patients, who are the people that you are providing the service to, whether it's internal or external. And it's useful to take that as a starting point and use that empathy. We're very much focused on that inclusive piece, as Claire outlined. Inclusive innovation is incredibly important, and allowing a wider cohort, to access public services. Until you put yourself in those shoes, I would have never have thought about this before Claire's project. I don't have any contact with the deaf community, and to think that that's sort of how they would have had to approach services before. So this is such a wonderful but also important project. And so projects like this are very much encouraged. Think about that empathy piece. Think about where there's access problems and how can this fund help? Can you come up with an innovation? So the other thing I really liked, Claire, about your project is that and so certainly we encourage is that you're looking at it in an iterative way. You're looking at that pilot and you're building and you're learning, and then you're developing further. So that's what we would all encourage from our team, is to sort of, you just don't go from idea to, huge project. You try, you experiment, you test with your users. So wonderful project. Thanks so much, Claire. Brilliant. Again, if anyone has questions for Claire, pop them in the question function. I also wanted to address, I think Vera mentioned the video piece as well. So just for those who don't know, there's an option, still an option this year. It's not mandatory. We do encourage it because it's really great to it helps communicate your project. So a two-minute video with your phone, or some of them are very elaborate altogether. You don't get docked marks. You're not at a disadvantage. Many people who didn't put in videos and they still got through. So it just helps, particularly it helps communicate more maybe technically complicated projects or health projects and so on. So definitely encourage them. They're really great for us. It breaks up. Last year we were looking at 364 projects. When the videos are there, it really helps communicate. And particularly when you think the final stage evaluators will look at about 70 projects. So anything for you to stand out. So we would encourage it, but again, it's not mandatory and you won't be docked marks. Okay. Thanks so much, Claire. So next up, for all those, and he might kill me for saying this, but for all those CSI fans out there, apparently that's not realistic, unfortunately, but all those who watch all those kinds of shows, like me, and are obsessed with all things forensic science, I'm delighted, another favourite, to welcome Dr. John O'Shaughnessy. John has worked at Forensic Science Ireland since 2007. He's currently the chemistry team manager and has responsibility for a variety of bulk evidence types, including explosives, arson, and offensive pepper sprays, and trace evidence types, including firearm residue from the discharge of a firearm, paint, and glass. You're very welcome, John.
Thank you for a very kind introduction, and also for the opportunity to present at today's webinar event. So this time last year, I attended the equivalent of this online event, which was held in the EY Wavespace venue in Harcourt Street. So I sat in the audience where you are today, and I listened to the previous year's contributors that were successful in getting their funding. So I had a copy of the competition information booklet, and I scratched a few notes here and there as each of the presenters imparted their advice and shared their experiences. I was impressed by the variety of projects funded, from the very simple to the complex. So at this stage, there were 3 weeks to the application deadline. So 3 weeks to come up with an idea, develop it, and submit an application for funding. So no easy feat. And what was the idea? It was Forensic Cop Shop, where the COP stands for Knowledge of Protocols. And in a nutshell, it involved developing and building an app which would serve as a digital platform for us at Forensic Science Ireland to communicate with our customers on all things forensic, namely the correct taking of samples, packaging, and labelling them. So ultimately, this project was awarded funding in a very competitive environment, and the amount awarded was €33,200. So now began the challenge of bringing the vision to life. So I had no experience or knowledge of how to build an app or create video content. So these were tasks that I had never done before. So I started talking to people. So I quickly realized that my original idea to get one company to build the app and create the video content was a non-runner. There's different areas of expertise. So I'd spend a good bit of time chatting to various companies, and the more I spoke to different potential partners, the more I learned about the needs of the project. And I eventually found 2 fantastic companies to work with. So the first one was Tadco, or the app development company, who were brilliant to work with, and they built the app. So while they were building the app, I was working with All Web Video, who are a one-man show who filmed the video content and did all the post-production editing and graphics to produce quality content for the app. So if you're thinking of your own app or video content, these guys are worth a chat to, I think. So they were the 2 external partners that I worked with to build the app and prove the concept of it. So just a few acknowledgements to all the staff at Forensic Science Ireland and senior management who contributed in their own way. To Ungarda Síochána, where they were part of the focus group, or they supported us in providing us with a film location. And a big thank you to the local Garda in Cabra Garda station for that. They were very supportive, very helpful. And to Garda Fleet Management, who supplied me with a crashed vehicle, which was used again to deliver good quality content for the application. So the approach we took was to develop a storyboard for each evidence type. So for example, we'll say paint evidence. We developed a storyboard that helped us with the who, the what, the where. It allowed us to plan in great detail to maximize each day of filming. It allowed us to have focus on the key message that we want out of the videos, some do's and don'ts, and also to develop a script for the voiceover. And it also allowed then the videographer to add his notes. So there was a huge cycle of feedback. We would get a crude cut of a video and we would go through it. We would change maybe the sequence of events. We would change the voiceover to match better with the video and so on. So there's lots of communication, lots of discussion, and lots of teamwork went behind each video that goes up in the app. So this is the front end of the app. It's what the user sees. So like any app, it has an icon. You tap on the icon and you can you can sign up or you can sign in. So part of the security features is that you have to sign up first, and we put you through a verification process to allow only those who need access to this information will get access to this information. So this is what I see as the administrator behind the scenes and the back end of the panel. And it's a very simple app to administer. I can add, edit, or delete content as required. And one of the companies that I spoke to in the earlier days was going to charge thousands of euro on an annual basis to do this. But this is something that I can do myself now quite readily. So again, if you go into one of the evidence types, you can see that there's a variety of different evidence, different ways of communicating our message to our customer. There's videos, there's images, and there's text, all again re-emphasizing and delivering our message. So this is what the user of the app sees again. So again, they just tap on whatever they want to see, whether it's a video or whether it's an information slide. They can go in and then read and can remind themselves of the best practices for this particular evidence type. One of the other features of the app is for each evidence type that you want to submit something to Forensic Science Ireland, there's a bespoke form. So if you are investigating a burglary and you see the potential for glass and paint evidence, there's a bespoke form for those that ask very kind of detailed and specific questions. And this is information that the staff at Forensic Science Ireland need to do our job as best as we know we can. So when we don't get this information, it can delay things. So again, the user sees all these forms on the mobile phone, and if they want to email the app to themselves, they just tap the icon and they email it to themselves. So that means the right person, the person who's investigating and who has all the kind of the primary information about the investigation, they get to fill in the form, and we get the best information at the time of submission. Other features are just general information where we can add, if we need to add a quick reminder or deliver a message to our customers, this is a handy way to do it. And then of course, like any other app, it has the usual features of being able to manage your profile, privacy policy, frequently asked questions. So while the app was being developed, we had 2 days of filming. And again, with the detailed storyboards, we were able to plan in detail and maximize those days. So again, Garda Fleet Management provided us with a crashed car, and that was fantastic because it really added to the authenticity of the video. We were allowed to do whatever we wanted to it. We didn't need to be precious with it. So we get great footage in relation to all the various different evidence types. And of course, then what added further authenticity were it was the staff of Forensic Science Ireland, the experts who work on these evidence types. They appeared in the video and imparted their knowledge and experience. So it wasn't an actor that we quickly showed what to do and then that they appeared on screen. It was the experts at Forensic Science Ireland. And then again, that added a huge degree of authenticity to the project. So again, there you can see just various scenes being filmed throughout the process, and this all appears then on the app. But not every evidence type requires a video. We can put up an information slide. So for example, here's an information slide about paint evidence. So we have a wooden substrate, and we can see all the different layers, the red layer and the yellow layer followed by the blue layer. So if we can get the right sample taken all the way down to the wood, and we can look at that layer structure back in the laboratory, and we can it can be very evidentially significant, whereas if you just scrape off the top blue layer, it's less evidentially strong. So I have a quick video here, and it's just a short clip that I selected from amongst all the video clips just to demonstrate a flavor of the app. So, and again, it's a lot of these visuals are really important in helping people understand how, say, forensic evidence creates linkages. So look at the glass and see how we might be able to link a person wearing this hoodie back to this, this scene where a window is broken.
The transfer of glass fragments to the clothing of the breaker will depend on a number of factors. The size of the window, the distance between the glass being broken and the breaker, whether entry is gained through the window, the type of clothing worn by the breaker and how well it can retain small particles, how the window is broken, the number of blows to the window,
So again, we can see that the visual there is really impactful and helps kind of bring people along in relation to kind of forensic science evidence and how we can create those linkages between, in this case, the person breaking the window and then the scene where that window was broken. Of course, when you're dealing with filming and video, there's always a blooper reel. So just another 10 seconds of a clip and you can see the unexpected results that we had on the day of filming. So that took a couple of takes, but we eventually got there. So when filming, they say never work with children, animals, and you can add John O'Shaughnessy to that list now. So thank you very much for your time. If I'm happy to answer any questions at the end. My email address is also on screen there if anyone wishes to contact me outside of this event. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, John. What a great presentation. Really interesting stuff. It's rare that you get kind of an insight into the workings. I've never seen anything like that into Forensic Science Ireland, and it's so interesting to see. I thought it was interesting. You've built upon an innovation that happened with the guards last year on Garda Síochána, rolled out a huge number of mobile devices. Tim Willoughby, head of innovation on Garda Síochána, I think was leading that, and building on that, knowing that they had those devices and then looking at your app development specifically, really, really interesting. So whilst you mightn't directly work in the specific organization, you know, hearing about other innovations can actually prompt further innovations and building upon that innovation. I just think it's incredible how you've really thought about the user, John, and you know, perhaps at a crime scene or whatever, and maybe someone who hasn't come across a particular type of crime for a while, and being able to just get that app out on your phone and quickly look, make sure that they're doing properly a refresh or whatever, and it helps you, it helps them, and collectively, you know, in terms of seeking justice. I think it's a phenomenal collaborative effort there, John, and you're really thinking about the reality on the ground. So well done. And as John said, if you have any questions for him, put them in the chat function or the Q&A function, and we'll get to them at the end. So next up, I'm delighted to invite a friend of our team, David Keeley. David, we were meeting mostly every week for pretty much most of last year, so a good friend of the team. David, who joined Enterprise Ireland in 2018 after spending almost 20 years working in the manufacturing and product design industry. He must have been in his childhood working at that stage. David is a chartered engineer with a background in mechanical, mechatronic and software engineering. He has spent most of his career working in senior R&D and innovation management roles. In Enterprise Ireland, David works as an innovation specialist, working on the development and implementation of the innovation strategy for Enterprise Ireland and its clients. So myself and Catherine in particular have worked very closely with David and his team on this, and you know, we'll chat about it afterwards, but it has gone live as of today. Catherine has made the whole thing live for the public service, so we'll chat about that. But over to you, David. You're very welcome.
Thanks very much, Breda, and yeah, look, I'm delighted to be here this afternoon. As Breda said, my name is David Keeley, and I work as an innovation specialist in Enterprise Ireland. I'm delighted to be here to talk to you about our project and the outputs we've generated, and more so about the fantastic experience we had in collaborating with IDA Ireland and with the Public Service Innovation team, so Breda and Catherine and Anne. I think the success of our application was due in no small part to the fantastic supporting video, and I know Breda talked about the video piece earlier on. I would really recommend that people try and our applicants try and use this as a way to augment their application. So before I go any further, I'm just going to ask Vinny to play the video, and then I'm going to bring up my presentation after that. So, are we back?
Yeah, back
okay,
live,
great.
Yeah.
So yeah, look, about that video, I think it's really fantastic that the grads within our organization, so we have a grad innovation network, and they were able to produce that video on freeware over the course of a couple of days. And I think it was a really useful touch point for us throughout the project, during the reports, whatever, to be able to go back to that to remind ourselves of what it is we were actually trying to achieve at the start. And I'd like to thank my colleague Michael Moyles, who heads up that network, about the work that he did. So I'll just share my screen now. Let's see. So can you see that? Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. So where did this project come from? Well, Enterprise Ireland is the government agency responsible for the development and growth of Irish enterprises in world markets. One of the key ways we do this is through innovation. And innovation is more important now than ever. With the significant disruptions caused by COVID and Brexit, Irish enterprises are having to innovate at an unprecedented rate, and also scope and the effectiveness of that innovation to maintain existing jobs for citizens and generate new jobs into the future. In 2019, Enterprise Ireland had a defined strategic objective to develop a digital innovation tool. So it goes back to that piece we were talking about. You know, you might already have an initiative in place, but what can the fund help you do to enhance and augment that? And we really saw an opportunity to enhance the scope of the project beyond the core requirements for an EI assessment tool. We envisaged a common digital tool that delivered a fantastic user experience, and that was a priority for us. That could be used, that was based on the new ISO 56000 series of innovation management guidance standards, and could be used by the entire public and private sectors. And in doing so, we saw an opportunity to really try and identify opportunities for learning, collaboration, and development across the board, and also a huge potential for generating significant insights from the data that will be collected from this to generate more effective strategy and policy into the future. I'm delighted to say the project's now complete. As Breda alluded to, it's been launched for public service colleagues today. And we should remind ourselves this is the first tool set of its kind anywhere in the world to be based on these new ISO series of standards, and we're getting significant recognition from that from the global ISO organization. So the project was funded through the Public Sector Innovation Call of 2020. It was a joint application between Enterprise Ireland and IDA Ireland. and the successful application was awarded 50,000 to help them develop the enhanced tool set. So our project comprised of 3 deliverables, with a version of each being created for Deeper, IDA Ireland and Enterprise Ireland. Each version would be tailored to the user needs of each organisation. The first deliverable was a very simple assessment for organisations that were taking their very first steps in innovation. It's based around innovation principles, broad innovation principles, rather than innovation capabilities. The second and more detailed tool that we're going to talk a little bit more about today was the Innovation Scorecard, and this was designed for organisations that have taken some steps along their innovation journey and have some experience, and it's more closely in line with innovation management and organisational capabilities. And the last deliverable was an analysis tool that the administration team in Deeper, IDA Ireland and Enterprise Ireland could use to actually derive meaningful insights from the data collected. But let's look at the Innovation Scorecard in a little bit more detail. So what is the scorecard? Well, put simply, it's an online questionnaire that's used to automatically generate a personalized PDF report for you to use. The questionnaire is mostly multiple choice, mostly multiple choice, and can be accessed on a desktop or a mobile device. It takes about 10 or 15 minutes to complete, and we know that for sure from the testing that we've done. The questions are aligned with the ISO 56000 series. And in the case of the scorecard, they're more specifically aligned with the Innovation Management System Capabilities Framework. The tool's primarily aimed at organisation and innovation leads. However, it can be used by anybody, and accessed by anybody within organisations. So, in the end, we created 3 distinct versions of the tool sets, and we did this with the scorecard as we did with the other deliverables. The tools are similar, but have some key differences to make them more suitable to target users. For example, it wouldn't make sense for us to take a tool that had been orientated towards Enterprise Ireland clients and try and use that with public servants, because the language and the approach needs to be very different. And we've worked very closely, and I'll talk about this later on in our journey piece. We've worked really closely with IDA Ireland and with Breda and her team to make sure that each of these is tailored for the best experience and to have the most impact. However, the underlying technology platform and data structure is the same, allowing for future potential collaborative data analytics and future platform development and integration. Just move on. So our journey, we followed a typical design approach for this project, and I'm going to use this framework to give a brief overview of our journey. It really began in 2019 with the Enterprise Ireland Innovation Strategy. We recognized that in order to help our clients innovate effectively, we had to raise awareness around the topic and help build systematic innovation capability in those enterprises. We needed a way to understand individual and collective strengths and weaknesses to provide the right supports. We envisaged that one of the key tools we needed was something similar to Enterprise Ireland's Brexit scorecard, except for innovation. The Brexit scorecard was a hugely successful innovation by Enterprise Ireland a number of years ago, and was extremely well received by clients, but also had a massive impact in clients' preparedness. We applied for funding in February last year for our project, but started generating and testing ideas in March. We collaborated really closely with IDA Ireland, and Breda and Catherine and Anne. On a Wednesday was collaboration day, if I remember correctly. So, and look, I have to be honest, we had a lot of fun doing that. It was hard and challenging work, but we were able to share the load, and everybody was able to contribute. As I said, Wednesday mornings were a time to look forward to rather than dread. And I think it's the key takeaway from the experience of this. For me, I'm really happy with the output from the project, and I think it can have a significant impact. But what I personally take away from this is the new connections that I've made and relationships I've formed here, and the experience that I had last year collaborating in this project. And I encourage anybody listening here to consider trying to find a way to collaborate with another organization or agency on their innovation project. So we rapidly followed a cycle of idea, prototype, test, and then back again. We undertook testing with users throughout and incorporated their suggestions for improving quickly. We developed a fully functional prototype that could be tested at scale on common Office 365 tools. There wasn't any coding involved, and we used some actual robotic process automation technology that's available as part of Office 365 subscriptions. And we didn't actually start work with a software vendor until September last year, and that was after we had something that we were happy with, that users had told us was working well for them. And I should also say we got great support internally in Enterprise Ireland from our management and colleagues right across Enterprise Ireland throughout the project, whether it was the sponsorship leadership or the willingness of some of my colleagues to test the early versions of the tool and give us their feedback. And our IT and marketing departments also got heavily involved to try and shape and help the quality of the output that we generated. So as I said previously, we tested tools in various iterations and multiple types of users throughout, but you can see some of the feedback that we got from final testing with users, and that was key to the process that we followed here. We were able to check, test and iterate quickly and refine the offering right the way throughout, and we should be able to maintain that into the future with the approach that we've used. So finally, I would say that I won't go through each of these points, but these are some of the areas that using the scorecard can help you as public and civil servants. And I know that Breda has already said that Catherine has made this available from today. So yeah, I look forward to any questions you might have on it. Thank you very much for your time.
David, before you stop the slides, I was just going to say, could you go back to the heat map? Show, because this obviously myself and Catherine and Anne have been very involved in this project, and I just think it'll be really helpful to organizations, and particularly in light of our own deeper public service innovation strategy that I mentioned our colleague Vera Mcgrath worked on last year and launched, and he had piloted it with several organizations. But if you look at that Making Innovation Real strategy on our website, this innovation scorecard is a perfect precursor. So if you don't know where to start instead of launching into your strategy, this is an absolutely fantastic tool. Do this. This will kind of basically give you an assessment of where you're at. And you'll see there, thanks a million, David, the heat map there. So that when you get your score, this indicates the areas that you need to work on and the areas that you're doing well. And it's a very, an absolutely super thing to be able to do, and then look in terms of having that conversation with senior leadership in your organization about where the areas you can work on. So I definitely, absolutely recommend this. So what we're going to do after this webinar is we'll be emailing innovation representatives. So we've about 130 innovation reps. They're all listed on our website. So if you're not sure who your innovation rep is, have a look. So in the first instance, we'll be inviting innovation reps to use the scorecard. So they then will be able to go onto our website, where Catherine's made it all live now, and request access to the scorecard, so effectively the survey part. And then once you fill that in, you'll be automatically sent the report. It's an extensive report, really helpful, loads of signposting to the different supports available. So well done, David and Michael, fantastic job, and also great work of Breda O'Toole, just to mention, in IDA Ireland and her team, and my team, Catherine, has done huge amounts of work. Catherine has tested it with public servants and so on as well, and Anne. So I definitely encourage you to check it out if you're the innovation rep or the person most likely to be involved in that strategy development piece. So whatever that might be in your organization, maybe you had innovation, maybe it's someone in HR or ICT, I'm not sure, but it's up to your organization. But in the first instance, we're inviting innovation reps to have a look at that. It really is an excellent tool. But thanks so much, David. It was interesting, you mentioned the video, and I don't know what tool you used, but Dean is our in-house film director and has come up with Powtoon videos every year. And it's amazing what you can do now, with all of this free and relatively cheap software. If you want to check out our video, Dean, where is it at? Is it on www.ops2020.gov.ie/funding? Is that where your video is?
Yeah. So if you go onto the website, you just click on Innovation Hub, has all the stuff there. Anything about the network, videos, the fund, just click on there, there's all the information.
and it's Powtoon, isn't it, that we use, Dean?
Yeah, the Powtoon
Yeah,
software.
so really great and relatively free or cheap software available for, obviously, for, you know, if you want to do video for this, but just for your general communication purposes. And thanks, Dave. I think David has I think put a gloss on all the hard work that actually had to take place. And I think another thing I might mention and ask David, like, obviously, you know, one might think that Enterprise Ireland has a lot of, you know, budget and sufficient funding, and, you know, in terms of your motivations and what you've gotten from the process, you know, might be a bit different. It's not just necessarily the funding piece, I think, that people are applying for.
No, I think that, look, there's definitely a point. Last year was a very challenging year, and you made the point that I'm sure some people were cursing the having applied for it. And look, there's no point in lying. There was points that, you know, we all had a lot of work on last year, and, you know, some of the you have to be passionate about this stuff. You know, it has to be, you know, something that you want to do, and something that you're willing to work through to get it done. But I genuinely, the impact of this isn't necessarily just about the output. It's about the experience and what you learn along the way, and the people that you work with along the way. So definitely, I found it a huge learning experience, and that's the big thing I've taken away from it myself. So I'm very grateful for that, and I think that's a very useful lens to look at this through when you're applying for it.
Thanks so much, David, and we very much enjoyed working with yourself and Michael throughout the year. Really great insights, and I think the key thing that has been common amongst all the projects is that empathy piece, really understanding the user, the client, or the patient, or whoever it might be, and thinking about their needs, and thinking about tailoring the particular service or product to that particular user. So that's really, really key in this. Okay, so last but not least, I'm delighted to introduce Dr. Alex Fakaludas from Munster Technological University. Alex works at the TEC Technology Gateway at the Nimbus Research Centre. He leads the team of software and enterprise solutions and has developed over 100 projects working with industry and community partners on areas such as Industry 4.0, STEM, promotion and energy optimization. I love this project demonstrates the scalability. Every public sector organization should be paying attention to this project. This is absolutely transferable, scalable, and incredibly important. We think about the climate action plan that was signed off in 2019 and subsequent plans last year, and how we all need to be thinking about our energy usage and how to monitor in a smart way, and to really, in that live scenario, make choices and changes and identify energy problems, I guess, you know. So you're very welcome, Alex. I'm delighted you could join us. Over to you. You're on mute, Alex. I think your mic is still on mute.
We're troubleshooting at the minute.
Okay, so bear with us.
Maybe if I try this, and that might give you a chance to
unmute. So thank you.
We can hear you, Alex. Great.
Yes. Okay. And share the screen. Not this one. Right, start. Okay, thank you, Brida, and sorry for the troubleshooting seconds. Okay, as Brida said, that what is the rationale of this effort is that there are national and European regulations and directives that we need to work towards reducing energy consumption, and there is a benchmark 33% between 2006 and 2020 for the public sector. Now, this is not a small problem. It requires actually some physical engineering work, insulating the buildings, installing better equipment. We focus on the informational aspect, and more important is how can we give the tools to monitor the progress towards this goal and actually pinpoint any difficulties that exist. So before starting the project, we had done another project with Cork County Council, and the idea was to provide an asset management tool for energy consumption monitoring. And okay, we have built that system. 400 different assets, buildings, facilities, appliances in Cork County, so not a big number. And we have provided them with reports on how to visualize the consumption in all these different assets. Now, that actually was a step forward to monitor and achieve these targets, but not enough. And actually highlighted further issues that we needed to take care of. Okay, we provided reports that visualize the bills, and you can see in graphs what's going on. 400 assets, and I suppose other county councils have similar amounts. How can you go and see each building, its appliance, how well they are performing? So as I said, this brought into the surface more of the work that needed to be done. And what did we do inside this project? First of all, we worked on pinpointing where there are bills that are more than expected. And this is not a simple issue, because how do we estimate what is a bill that should cause an alert? In some cases, especially for buildings, we need to take into account the weather conditions, like we had more gas for heating because it was a cold day. But in other cases, it's okay. For example, festive lights, we expect bills in November, December, January maybe, but not in July. So depending on the type of the asset, we develop some intelligent algorithms to identify what bills are supposed to be tagged as alerted because they were more than expected. And on the top of that, we give the opportunity to the building manager, to the directory manager, to go and give a reason why this occurred. Very important to say that we do that in a way that is not blaming. We don't want to blame someone. It is for informational purposes. The whole goal is to identify which reasons on a specific asset or overall in a council level lead to increased consumption, so as to work for that. And as I say, it's not blaming, because let's say a hall in Mallow had increased consumption this month. Why? Because there was a festival there, so they need to keep the heating on for more days, or there was maintenance work, or to put it a similar reason, that bill was higher than expected because the previous bills were estimated and now we received the full bill. Again, the idea is give the tools to the county personnel, first of all, to pinpoint where problems exist and what are the reasons that cause these problems. And based on that, they can go then and make the corrective actions. The second intervention we did was around smart meters. Now, the previous work was on bills received from the energy provider. It is definitely a step forward, but it is received at the end of the month, so you cannot go back into time and say, yeah, switch off the heating. It has the damage, let's say, has already been happened. What smart meters do? They can give us real-time measurements on energy consumption. And we used the funds of the project to purchase 3 smart meters, oil tanks of Cork County. The pilot phase was successful, and Cork County went and purchased 11 more. So all the all the oil tanks that they have now, they're monitored by smart meters. What smart meters give us is that we can intervene in almost real time. The graph that I have there is how full is the tank. In other words, how much oil energy is consumed. And you can see, especially for the blue line, it goes down as every day we consume energy, and sometimes it's flat. This is the weekend. So obviously they switch it off in the weekend. What we can do is that detect anomalies. For example, if inside the weekend we keep on consuming energy, raise an alert. And an alert, as I said, it is not that someone forgot the heating on, or if that happened, go and switch it off, but also explain, give a reason. As I said, we needed to have it because there was a festival during the weekend. Now, the smart meters, again, give us the opportunity to intervene when increased consumption is actually happening. And apart from these interventions, we also increased the amount of reports we provide to the council. For example, the graph you see there, it shows the yearly average consumption for a building, and the red line is the SEAI benchmark. So you can see that this building for 2020 is performing below the line, which is good. Or someone also can go and see all the buildings. These are the colors used for SEAI to demonstrate if the building is meeting the energy targets or not. The idea is that we can go to the orange ones. Orange are the ones that are reducing the consumption but not reaching the benchmark yet, and concentrate on actions where it is needed to meet the target. And we also provided export to reports, because the whole journey also requires reports to be generated rather than going copy-paste on the diagrams. There it is, the Word file that you can use to produce the report. You can see here the bottom graph is around the estimated bill depending on heating degree days. This is a metric, a weather metric to say how cold the day was. And we performed regression on that to identify bills with alerts, as we call them. You can see here everything seems to be pretty fine, except the top left where there is a dot. That was a bill that it was too much. That's my idea. That's what I'm saying. That's my point. Go and check and give a reason why this happened. Okay. Now, sorry. Overall, the solution, what was our contribution in the whole journey for reducing energy consumption, to provide a single platform that goes from data collection, collect through Excel files that the energy providers give, all the bills, all the data that we needed, visualize it, but also understand, identify where things are wrong, give reasons, and therefore all the tools are there for the council to take further actions and reduce them. Plus, give them the current situation, are we doing well or not? Now, apart from that, we utilized the smart meters. Again, one step forward. Smart meters are tools that are not very expensive these days, and they're widely used, but they're widely installed, but not fully utilized. For example, you can have a dashboard, you can see the consumption, but you're not going to be there 24 hours a day monitoring. So something needs to be done on a machine level to give you any alerts. Okay, and as Brida said, the tool is geography agnostic. Okay, it has been applied to Cork, but it could be transferably easy to other local authorities. And in another effort, again with Cork County, we extended the functionality to cover water, waste, and waste characterization data, because there are similar targets to meet apart from the energy. So thank you, everyone, and I would like, last but not least, to acknowledge the help we got from Derek Crowley in Cork County Council. He gave us all the insights and worked with us to deliver the project. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Alex. Fantastic presentation. Do you think that it's applicable to maybe like a relatively small house in Drumcondra? Because I think I need to think about monitoring my meters a little bit better. Now that we're all in lockdown. But thanks again, Alex. So important. You know, we have a lot of targets in the public service for the next 10 years to reach, and using some smart meters, IoT, sensor technology, and sharing these insights and thinking about how they can be applied across the public service is so important. While some of us are just working from home, there's lots of us like Vera and other colleagues who are in the office the whole time. And when we think about the numbers of buildings in our health sector, for instance, that absolutely need to, you know, they can't be turning down the heating or whatever, but, you know, there's different ways to assess, you know, the energy usage. So I think there's huge scalability potential with your project, Alex, and thank you very much for outlining it so clearly. So that's a whistle-stop tour. So, I feel like this is just a whistle-stop tour of all my favorite innovation stories over the last year. So thanks again for all of our wonderful speakers. So I'm going to pass over to Vinny now. If there's any questions that he might want to put to the panel or to myself or Anne or Catherine or Dean in terms of the fund itself. So far ahead, Vinny, thanks.
Yeah, I might just start off with Vera and Claire, maybe just to make sure they're still alive. I know we haven't had a chance to hear from them in a little while. So I might ask the question, and then I'll pepper Breda with a few questions to give you time to think of your answers. So just for Vera, it's a fantastic presentation from Vera and team spelled in capital letters. So they just want to know, how have you measured the impact from a service perspective, and was it necessary when you were putting this into your application? And then for Claire, how did you determine an estimate budget for an application that hasn't been built yet? So kind of what did you do to estimate that budget? So maybe just while you're thinking of that, I'll go to Breda for a few quick fire ones. People in here still asking, is there any point submitting applications that were rejected from last year? Is there, does your own organisation have to provide funding as well, contributing funding as well?
Okay, so the first one, yeah, that, I mean, I think in year 2 we funded something that got rejected in year 1, but like it's a highly competitive fund. So, you know, maybe think about feedback that we gave, think about talking to the people, think about the areas of the criteria, about how, you know, the different areas can be improved upon, because it's all essentially marks in the first round. So there'll be a team of evaluators first stage, 3 sets of eyes on every project. And looking at the numbers of last year, if we got similar kind of numbers, it will be the top 70 projects then in terms of the points awarded that will move to the final stage evaluation. And there then they had about a 1 in 2 chance of being funded. So, you know, look at the project with fresh eyes. Is there any amendments to be made? Is there maybe more of a need now since COVID? Because COVID impacts might make the project seem actually more important. A lot of people told us projects pre-COVID, you know, they thought they were important, but the fact is now, you know, it's a different world we're living in, and so your project might be even more necessary. So, but just put a new lens on it and see if it can be improved, look at the criteria and apply. And the second question was, I forgot.
Do your organisations have to provide funding as well?
Oh yeah, well, obviously we like to see match funding, you know, and and that's of course welcome, but you don't know if you, but you do need to show commitment, and you need to show that, say, a particular person. I think Vera and others outlined that it is a big commitment to do these projects, and it can kind of take over sometimes, and you know, you still have your day jobs on top of everything usually. So just like if you're able to say that a particular portion of how many people's time would be committed to the project, like the staff committed to the project, that would be sufficient. But do outline obviously if there's match funding, but it's not necessary. What's important in that portion where the 10 marks are is also to outline your plans, your financial plans. So like if you're, you know, we've come across before where maybe people weren't ready to get started with procurement. You know, we want to know that for if it maybe that's not the phase you need to be applying for. Like think about when are you actually ready to do your procurement, if there's a procurement element, and that, if it's over threshold, will take a significant amount of time. You have till obviously November 15th, 16th, hopefully someone will jump in, I can't remember the date. So you need to be sure that you'll be able to get and do the project and pay all your contractors or whatever it might be, or buy all your goods before that date. So yeah, I think that's that.
Perfect.
Thanks.
So back to Vera then. How have you measured the impact from, say, a service perspective?
So the first thing I suppose I should say is that the equipment only came in November. So we got the funding in May, and it took that long for it all to be implemented, between the grass box coming and the equipment to be flown in from Slovenia. So it hasn't been a major amount of time yet. For the BIMEO, we do general functional outcome measures of all different activities, and it feeds into that, and we can track whether someone functionally is improving throughout their rehab. And then for the GRASP, we have outcome measures that we've looked up in the literature that are evidence-based to use with the GRASP. We would do them before we implement the GRASP and at the end of their rehab as well. And they're functional based as well. So we can track whether or not the GRASP has a direct contribution towards that. It hasn't given us a lot of time, like in regards of the 7-day service and measuring that. I did an audit beforehand, and I intend to audit it again as it is now, and then when we reopen for visitors, because at the moment we're just at the training, the staff stage training, healthcare staff, so that they can set people up with the grass box in the evening and the weekend. But they might be called away, you know, for another patient. They're not necessarily doing a one-on-one, and it's the one-on-one patients that need like a family member or someone to sit down with them for 20 minutes is the patient we can't yet capture of how much it's influencing them. So that's where I'm at the moment, is just re-auditing the very initial audit that I did of what patients actually do in the evenings and the weekends, and the patients who can be completely self-directed, where the box can come out, the manual can come out, and they can just be set up and left off, and just looking at them. And then when families come back in and more staff are trained, looking at the patients who need a lot of cues and a lot of setup of how it directly impacts them. So it's going to, you could come back to me in a year and I might have the answer of that.
But say maybe from the application point of view, then you use the lit review then to kind of show where the impact for the service would be.
Yeah. So there's a lot of literature around the GRASP, and then there's less so about the BIMEO. But just because something new doesn't mean it doesn't work. It just means the evidence doesn't exist yet. So I'm really interested in research and going on the next step to use this as a research for our profession as well. There's only 2 of the BIMEO in the country, so there's a massive there's massive opening there for research to be done myself.
Amazing. So I might just fly back to Claire really quickly. How did you determine then the estimate budget for the app? I think you're on mute.
So when we started out the project, we had this idea that we were going to develop an app and that we were going to start from scratch. But once we started scoping out what the needs were, we really discovered that we needed to have also a platform that was linked to that, where the interpreter could be facilitated to deliver the service. And then we needed to have other tie-in pieces, so the public service could contact us. So there was so much involved even with that, not to mind gathering all the data, that we went out and we ended up procuring the app through another service. There are 2 main providers of remote interpreting services across the world that deliver across the States, Canada, and Europe. So we went out and we procured 6 months kind of use of the platform and the app and the service through there. We will, once we procure it permanently, then that will become something that we'll need to customize. But I'm thinking maybe that John might be able to give an idea with regard to the budgeting of the actual app, because I think John's one was customized for the project.
Yeah. John, you might actually jump in there, because there's a question for you asking the name of the app developer that you use too, please.
Yeah, so the company that I ended up with was called TADCO, T-A-D-C-O, which stands for the App Development Company. And they were one of a number of software development companies that I spoke with, because again, I had no experience. And again, I found by having these conversations, you were learning all the time about what, with the kind of questions that they came back to me with about the project. So I had spoken to a couple of people that I know who are into software development, and they were able to give me some kind of indicators of this is an approximate. There's some tools online that you can punch in what you want, and it will tell you approximately how much this app might cost. So I used various different, I suppose, options available to me, and I kind of put together, I suppose, a crude approximation, but that turned out to be quite reasonable in the end. But I did drive a hard bargain with the companies, because the unknown for me at that time was how many videos would I be able to create. So I did drive a hard bargain, because I wanted, fine, you could develop the app, but you needed to have content then to, I suppose, for people to interact with. So I was always very mindful of that. So again, the two companies that I work with were really flexible. They wanted to work with us on this project. They were very interested, which was great. And between the whole lot of us, we made it happen. So we managed to build the app for just under €25,000. And then we now are in the position where we can accurately predict. So we know how much a day's filming costs. We know if we plan them carefully, we can get lots of footage. And we know then we have a very good approximation of how much a video costs to produce to the level and quality that we wanted to be. So we're in a very strong position to build on this, because this was always about a proof of concept. It was never about delivering a complete, fully functional app. This is going to grow and develop over the years, and we're in a very strong position at the moment. So that's kind of where we're at.
And then there's a question here from Philip, kind of leading on from the content creation possibly. He said he's looking to upgrade his car and was wondering what the make and model was in the blooper video. Seemed to have very strong windows.
One uncareful owner, I wouldn't go near it.
Thanks so much, John. Just flying over to David then. There was a question here. Would you consider the possibility of users making minor adjustments to the scorecard questions to suit their specific organizations? Is that a possibility within the scorecard?
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting idea. We've certainly designed the underlying infrastructure in a way that could potentially be accommodated. It's very flexible the way we've done it. We've built in the ability for, if you look at the underlying language and question structure and the syntax kind of used, it's very different between Enterprise Ireland and IDA Ireland and the Public Service Innovation Team. So we could extend that into the future, to allow for organizational level customization. We'll perhaps build it. We're having quarterly roadmap meetings with our collaboration partners. So I think that's a really good idea.
Yeah, so that question actually came in from someone from Stuart in the Defence Forces. So maybe they can see that some of the questions might need to be tailored a bit towards. So there you are, possible discussion point at next Wednesday's meeting or whatever the meetings are. Alex, then just quickly to you. I know you've answered the question already, but in case other people hadn't answered, Brian had asked, is the Cork County project platform readily scalable for other county councils and possibly other public sector organizations?
The short answer is yes. We don't care about the geography, and it can also be deployed centrally or at the IT domain of its authority as well.
Perfect. So I know we're getting kind of close to wrapping up time, so I might just ask each speaker one final question because it was of interest last week. If you might just let us know what your award was and if there was match funding given in your own host organization. I know people just seem to like to know. It's nice to know that there's a good array of figures. So I might start with Vera, that's all right?
Yeah, so we were awarded 15,000 and that covered everything. So I didn't need to seek funding for it was all completely covered within that. The only thing was obviously you asked me the question yesterday about funding. If you don't have the money, is there an issue with suppliers and things like that? Generally for HSE procurement, people only see the money when the product is delivered anyway. I found that dealing with companies, some of them I did have to show a copy of a memorandum that this was a contract, that you were a reputable organisation, and I was very confident that I was going to see the funding once I delivered. And then for others, they were more relaxed, particularly the healthcare company who I dealt with for the BIMEO. They were used to this type of procurement, not seeing money up front. But definitely, I think if you have that contract there, and you do need to, I had to scan one of the pages just to say what date I was getting the money by, just as proof on their part, and that was for the smaller company, and there was no issues. So there was 15,000, I would say around 13,000 went towards the BIMEO, nearly 1,500 went towards the grass boxes, and then there was just miscellaneous money after that. So no, like I could have picked a 25,000 euro system, and I could have applied for that, but I was very much happy to go for the lower priced equipment. It ticked all our boxes.
Perfect. And same question to you, John.
We were awarded 33,200 euro, and we pretty much spent the full amount again. It was just under 25 grand to build the digital platform, the app part, and then the rest was spent on video content to get as much. So we actually managed to get an extra day's filming, and we managed to get a bit more content than we had originally anticipated. So that was great. So there's a bit more kind of post-production editing to be done there. But 33,200 all in.
And you sound like a man who drives a hard bargain. I'm sure a few people might be contacting you for negotiations, possibly. Same question for you, Claire.
So we were granted 50,000 funding from the Innovation Fund, and we used that to get because of procurement and the time limit, we ran a procurement up to 25,000. So that restricted us to running a 6-month pilot, and e-tenders process would be needed to get a full, the full permanent solution in place. But so the fund covered like the app, the platform for the interpreters. It covered the Qmetrics piece, which delivers all the data. We got some social media sort of support, consultation to develop social media campaigns. The educational videos that we're going to share with the public service are coming out of that. And then the pieces that we had to cover, that we covered ourselves. So the evaluation, CIB is paying for the, we allocated some additional funding to SLIS to hire interpreters, but then there's the laptops, the headphones, all of those extra pieces that weren't included. And there was a lot of remote interpreting costs for the consultation, which also we funded ourselves. I don't have an actual figure for what we matched it with, but there was quite a substantial amount of money kind of pushed to get pushed towards it. But it's all driving what we do, and part of our kind of remit as an organization. It kind of comes under there anyway. But I mean, to use the opportunity, we kind of took as much funding as we could. But yes, like some staffing and extra pieces to help get the project by were needed. But an actual figure, sorry, I can't give you.
No, it's no problem at all. And Alex?
We were awarded 30,000. We spent 3,000 in the pilot installation of 3 smart meters, and the rest was for software development and data analysis to contractors.
And then finally, David.
Yeah, so we were awarded, both ourselves and IDA Ireland were awarded 50,000, and that was for delivery of a system from, a kernel of idea right through to something that was at production level. So the actual spend was significantly more than that, but because Enterprise Ireland, a portion of this was something Enterprise Ireland was going to do anyway, we covered the expenditure for that ourselves. But I mean, the in-kind contributions are probably much even larger again than that, whether it's, our IT department providing hosting this on the underlying infrastructure, the time that was put in by myself and my colleague Michael Moyles, or in the IDA, Breed O'Toole and Helen Burke in the IDA. Obviously, we had time from you guys as well, but that wouldn't have been included in our proposal. But yeah, significant amount of in-kind contribution, and then some extra cash from us for the piece that we were going to do anyway.
Excellent. And I'll just hand back to Breda now.
Thanks, Vinny. Just a couple of points there as well. So the tendering is very important. You know, you must follow the public procurement rules, and you know, the OGP's website, I think it's ogp.gov.ie, have a look at that about thresholds and things if you're not familiar with that. So it's really important. You know, anything over a certain amount requires it to go up on e-tenders. And then there's, you know, and we'll look for proof in our final reporting stage. So Anne will be there looking for all this material. I should say that this year we will be doing probably like a Zoom or something with all of the successful applicants and talking you through the process at an early stage, and there'll be a guidance. But that's one point. The second point, and just to make this incredibly clear, we will not be funding any salary costs or staffing costs, just contract for services. So that comes up time and time again. So, you know, anything that has a lot of future liability to the Exchequer, we won't fund. So it's current non-pay that we would fund in the main, but also capital as well. So, but you'll see it all in our guidelines, but definitely no salary costs. We don't want to see salary costs because that's ineligible straight away. And the other thing, what was I going to say? Contractors, though, are obviously eligible. So if you're getting contractors to work, they are eligible. And then I think there was a question about, is your organisation counted as a public sector organisation? I suppose you'll have to, I mean, some of them are fairly obvious and some aren't. Page 5 of our guidelines outlines the eligibility. So are you more than 50% funded by the Exchequer? Are you, if you're Section 39, you're not, Section 39 organisation, you're not counted. A charity isn't counted as a public sector organisation, or a commercial organisation in the public sector is not counted. But if you want to check page 5, if you're still unclear, you know, another handy way is, you know, is the staff of your organisation, are they able to pay into that single pension, public service pension scheme? That's a good way of a simple test, and there's a website you can check if your organisation is on if you look up single pension scheme. If after all that you're not clear, come to us and we'll have a chat and we'll figure it out together. It's not always really simple to know, but certainly Section 39's charities and commercial organisations are not eligible. So I think that's all the sort of serious stuff, but I want to say thanks again for the wonderful stories that have been shared by our colleagues today. So and a big thanks again particularly to Vera, who's joining us from hospital environment through these very tough times. And so Vera, thanks a million. Claire, John, David and Alex. I also want to thank my own team who are super, and Vinny, Dean and Catherine. And again, any questions that you might have, send them in to us at innovation@per.gov.ie. We're so looking forward to seeing the projects this year, and we hope we can beat last year's number, 364. No pressure. The more you want funding, the more funding we will get, if you know what I mean. So it's really important that we see that the public services are interested in what we're doing here with this initiative, and it's successful, and it'll help you know, the powers that be see the importance of it and the need for it. So if in doubt, send the project in and get in touch if you've any questions at all. And again, thanks for today. This is all recorded. It'll be up on the website, and all the slides will be available as well. So thanks again to everybody. Take care. See you next week, same time.